Hi, my name is Johnny Nash, and I'm a recruitment founder and global headhunter for the last 23 years across UK and international markets. I work within the tech, fintech, digital and telecom sectors, and previously within FMCG, placing mid to senior and senior to executives for startups who become scale-ups and scale-ups who become unicorns, as well as some of the most famous multinational companies across the globe. I'm ranked in the top 1% for all headhunters and recruiters globally. I run the biggest recruitment and careers club on Clubhouse, which is a social audio platform. And I have placed over 3,000 candidates to date as a careers and accountability coach. So what are we talking about today? We're talking about how not to get fired again. That's correct. How not to get fired again. So getting fired is an emotional gut punch that will probably leave you reeling in the minutes or hours or days soon after. It can be tempting to tell the world how unfair your former employer was. But it's important not to do anything you'll regret. First, don't go on social media to badmouth your former employer. Most individuals will get fired at least once during their careers, me included. However, when it repeatedly happens, it can be both personally and professionally imperative to find out why and what the hell is going on. So what do you need to do? Well, start off in evaluating yourself. Consider what could have been done differently to keep your job. Recognizing what went wrong and work habits that may contribute to repeated job loss is the first step towards changing the pattern and improving your work experiences. So let's get to the rules of how not to get fired again. Rule number 1, know the zero tolerance rules in the company. I've even seen experienced executives forget this one. Zero tolerance rules are rules that get you fired immediately. There is no review, no second chance. You break one, they walk you out. Rule number 2, frequent slacking off for days off. If there is something going on in your life which is requiring you to be away often, you should talk to your manager. If you can't, then that says a lot about your relationship. Rule number 3, poor role performance. So those who take pride in their job and love what they do are on the right lines of success, rather than the job being a means to an end and living for the weekend. If you're just getting through the week as quickly as possible, and that's more important than turning in superior work, you may have just found the root of your problem. Quality of performance, as opposed to just getting rid of your workload, so to be in the good books of your bosses, your leadership, at the expense of quality, is a recipe for disaster. So what happens is, as your work gets assessed, bosses will be able to determine the quality of your work, not just the quantity. So if you're just rushing through your workday, your job could very well be on the line. Rule number 4, inability to perform the basic tasks. So the technical skills that enable you to do your job and to get that position in the first place via either a headhunter or directly may be great on paper. But if you don't know how to perform the basic tasks that keep workplaces going, that could spell real issues for you around the corner. So your manager, leaders in respective companies have the right to assume that their employees can do simple tasks like answering the phone properly, making proper introductions, and composing professional emails, especially in the digital age we're living in, where electronic communications are the forefront of most of our communications. So if this is an issue, don't get disheartened, because it's an easy fix. Every one of us has had to learn professionalism basics at some point. Failure to do so can cost you big time in the end. However, you can turn this around through self-development and feedback on how to improve your professionalism basics. Number 5, failure to meet deadlines. This is a big one and will cause you to be in the danger zone with your job and will have negative repercussions on your career. So if you start to develop a reputation or have the inability to hit deadlines, you then cost your employer. Time is money and money is time. The client and employers don't like to be kept waiting. Fortunately, you can improve time management skills and that which can help to solve the problem. But the critical aspect of this issue in terms of failing to meet deadlines comes even more so on the management of expectations. So don't just agree to deliver something and commit to deadlines if you know in your heart of hearts this is not going to be achievable. Always best to manage time deadlines realistically. Better to under-promise and over-deliver rather than over-promise and under-deliver. So what else do you need to do? Well, learn how to prioritize your work and communicate with your supervisor or manager as soon as you feel that you're starting to fall behind. When you communicate proactively, you can show really good faith that you're able to hit your deadlines, and you may be able to get help from co-workers and colleagues before it's too late. Last, but certainly not least, avoid procrastinating and delaying. Stop delaying and start doing. Start doing the tasks that you least like first than the ones you simply enjoy. Putting off work won't help you anyone. You'll have to do it eventually, and you might as well do it now. Number 6, the inability to get along with co-workers. So this is vital, right? Working as a collective and as a team is integral to all employers. No one is bigger than the company. The team must come first, and you cannot get on with colleagues, or if you don't develop positive working relationships, but instead disrupt or cause drama or negative, obstructive, by listen or simply bring the team down, then you'll soon be out. As without cohesive teams, the business is impacted hugely and it then suffers. Interpersonal problems are distracting, and if they're allowed to continue too long, productivity declines. That's why bosses will get rid of any employees consistently involved in drama. So if you find yourself constantly arguing with co-workers, that could be you, even if you don't feel like you're the one starting issues. When your boss looks to weed out the root of the problem, but you come back and say, well, they started it, it won't cut it as a defense. You don't have to love everyone in your workplace. It's just not possible, right? You don't even have to like them. But you do have to work on establishing good working relationships with all of your colleagues. So that may occasionally include swallowing your pride, ignoring rude behavior within reason, or declining to participate in gossip. The reasons being, as you see the bigger picture. Don't get me wrong, you need to show that you can stand up for yourself, your beliefs, your convictions. And sometimes we all need to choose our battles and think what is best for the team we work in. Number 7, temper management issues. So anger can be such a good thing when channeled into positives. You might be surprised when I say that, but it really, really can. So if we look at tennis stars like Novak Djokovic or John McEnroe, they get the best out of themselves when they get angry because they channel it into a positive thereafter. Steve Jobs was famous for his temper, as the appearance of anger can install a sense of passion, which makes people want to follow or please. So according to research conducted by Henry Evans and Colm Foster, who are emotional intelligence experts and authors of Step Up, Lead in 6 Moments That Matter, the highest performing people and highest performing teams tap into their entire spectrum of emotions. However, temper management problems can cause your employer to see you are a liability rather than a valuable employee. Uncheckered temper can actually result into physical violence. If you can't control your temper, your boss could fear you'll be responsible for the next instance of a workplace issue, that you're unable to take any type of criticism, that you're impossible. They can't debate things with you, can't discuss aspects of work within a team brainstorming sessions. That's really, really critical. But fortunately, there are resources out there to help you manage your temper. Number 8, negative attitude. Temper and interpersonal problems are two forms of negativity, but they aren't the only ones. Even if you get along with co-workers and haven't had an outburst, you can still spread negativity by simply being a downer. Negative attitudes can include constant complaining, sluggish behavior, and pessimistic outlooks. Negativity and negative attitudes is one of the biggest reasons that you will get fired and lose your job or get stuck in your career. People want to be surrounded by other people who lift them up and not bring them down. Positivity leads to greatness. Negativity leads to the exact opposite. Bosses don't like workplace negativity. You know why? Because it tends to be infectious. It spreads quickly from one employee to another and damages the workplace morale. This is why this aspect is particularly important. Raising issues is fine, but bosses don't want people who just bring problems, but people who have solutions to these problems. So you might find there's a certain level of satisfaction in complaining about your work with an employee, but it's a slippery slope, right? That can establish bad habits of constant negative comments. Even if your grievances are legitimate, don't complain incessantly. Instead, find specific ways to improve conditions in your workplace. And don't bring anyone else into your issues unless you propose a solution that will make both of you happier. Number 9, unwillingness to take on challenging projects. So people outside of their comfort zones, it makes you feel apprehensive, can make you feel anxious, uncomfortable. So when you take on challenging tasks, it can be daunting. However, you don't have to accept tough assignments. You miss an opportunity to not only improve your self-development, but to improve your value to the organization. So when you repeatedly turn down projects, you don't have to take those projects, but if you repeatedly turn down those projects, it'll give your boss the impression that you're uninterested in your job, you're unwilling to learn new things, or maybe even you're just plain lazy. But there's an important balancing act at this point. You obviously don't want to take on projects which you're wildly unqualified for. Instead, take on difficult tasks that show off your strengths while building upon them. Demonstrate how you meet challenges head on and embrace opportunities to expand your skill set. When you do have to turn down an assignment, learn the right way to say no to your boss. For example, you might have to explain, your workload is already too full. Or if the project requires skills you don't have, tell your boss that you're working to build those skills and you just aren't quite there yet. Number 10, the victim. So this is the person who constantly sees themselves as a victim in the workplace. They believe others for their lack of success, and they get very defensive when constructive criticisms are given. They feed off others' pity and seek attention, but are rarely interested in solving issues. They would rather talk incessantly about a problem rather than take action to fix it. So every one of us has had bad days at work, and sometimes we feel like our ideas aren't taken seriously. But the difference between a person who has bad day or two and someone with a victim mentality is that the latter constantly acts poorly and rejects directions or constructive critiques. Number 11, the challenger. So this is the last personality type that gets more fired than others, is the challenger. So this is the type of person who likes to question everything and sees the possibility for improvement and refinement in all situations, but to a fault. The challenger often has great ideas, but they're hard to manage because they refuse to work with the team. They think they can do every task themselves and challenge anyone, including those of authority, to tell them differently. It takes a special leader to manage this type of employee, and companies just don't have the time to figure it out and how to best manage these employees. So for this reason, challengers usually get fired before others. So what are the 7 things you should never do after getting fired? Number 1, lose control. Obviously, you'll have an emotional response, but it's vital you don't let your emotions spin out of control. So if you take your dismissal personally and burn bridges, you may hurt yourself down the road when you need a reference or you run into a former colleague at other organizations. So make sure you are professional throughout the whole process. It's hard. We're all human beings. We all have our emotions. Sometimes we wear a heart on our sleeve. But if we lose that control and we burn our bridges, then we might regret it later down the line. Number 2, broadcast your intentions. Resist the temptation to tell your former employees that you're going to sue the company, even if that's exactly what you intend to do. There are many ways to readdress legitimate concerns over a termination, but blowing steam back at your former company is not one of them. Number 3, hide. Getting fired is embarrassing and it's painful. And the natural reaction is to avoid interacting with others, curl up, shut the doors away as you cope with the emotional roller coaster. However hard it may be, you need to treat it like as if you were falling off a bike and get back on. What I call that is the bouncy bum. You fall down, you get back up. And you need to start looking for a job the very, very next day. It's good for your confidence and it helps to build momentum in finding a job. Number 4, lie about it. As you look for a new job, you'll have to consider how to address your firing if it comes up in an interview. So be brief, don't lie, but don't overindulge. Don't over elaborate too much, okay? But at the same time, don't hide it away if it comes up, because these things in niche sectors, niche areas, in your particular lane, they have a habit of coming up and you don't want to regret that. Number 5, get discouraged. This is easier said than done. But hanging on to anger in a negative and wallowing in bad feelings will make it harder to move on in your career. So you might get, clients, if they see candidates that are depressed, beaten up, negative, before they've even got the job, they won't hire them, because who wants to hire someone who isn't positive and upbeat? So before you do anything, before you take a job interview after getting fired, make sure you're in a good place mentally. Otherwise, you can just let yourself down because you exude that negativity and you look like you've been beaten up before you've even started. And that's completely disencouraging. Number 6, let it define you. So you've got a black mark on your work history. You've got some painful memories or memory. You may feel like it's impossible to learn or grow and move on from the experience of getting fired. Don't let that happen to you. Use that time to reflect, improve yourself, upgrade your skills, and find your passion. Many times I've seen that the best success after someone has been fired, because it was the impetus after that firing for that person to make the changes they needed in their life. So keep an open mind and turn your situation into a positive. The final rule after getting fired: the next steps you take are for today. It's not the easiest thing to do in the world, but you need to pick yourself up after being fired and get back out there via LinkedIn, social media, your networks. People say your network is your net worth. It's actually working on your weaker ties and making them stronger ties. So next steps, get back up there. So how to get hired after being fired? So being fired makes looking for a new job more difficult. Why? Because you have that firing hanging over your head like a dark cloud, and it can knock your confidence. But the good news is that it's possible to find a new job. Not just possible, it's probable. And in fact, one day you'll succeed at, and in fact, one day you'll enjoy doing. So here are a few things that you need to do in order to get hired after being fired. As I've mentioned before, you really need to have a self-reflection exercise where you consider what role you played in the firing. Are you one of those personality types that I mentioned? If so, what can you do to change your attitude at work to succeed at your next job? The next aspect, make sure when you exit a company, you do it in a professional manner, and that you do it in a manner where you don't burn bridges. Because by doing so, that will enable you to get other opportunities further down the line. And you never know when you need that person or that company or wherever you come into contact in terms of your career and your work. Like I mentioned before, if you're asked about the firing from your last job, just be honest, tell the interviewer. Companies understand that firings and layoffs happen all the time. Getting hired after being fired isn't impossible at all. What's challenging is for people to stay in and keep in making sure that they're staying hired because of their workplace personality. So it's really vital that you make those changes today, not tomorrow. Too many people talk a good game, but it's the actions that define us. So self-reflect, look at what's gone wrong, and make sure that it doesn't happen to you next time. So this is Johnny Nash, and this is many sessions that we're going to run on multiple platforms. And I think it's very important for the community that I want to build up. Too many people have a lot of kind of questions and issues around important aspects of the world of work, careers, recruitment. And I want to make that difference. I want to make that change. I want to help my communities on multiple social media platforms. So if you like this video and you found it constructive, please leave your comments and your likes. And I will be making many, many more videos on all aspects from A to Z. So until next time, thank you very much.